Auden Cross stood under crystal lights at a Washington, D.C. charity gala and smiled so hard his cheeks hurt. He had the kind of smile that said, "Everything is handled." He had the kind of suit that said, "Money is not a question." And he had the kind of eyes that said, "Do not test me." Behind him, a huge screen played a video of Crownline Logistics trucks rolling down highways in clean electric fleets. The video ended the same way it always did: kids in foster care getting new laptops, new backpacks, new hope. The crowd clapped. Auden raised his glass. His wife Amaris stood beside him in a black dress that was simple but deadly. Amaris had calm eyes and a steady mouth. People always assumed she was the pretty wife. They were always wrong. Amaris was a crisis negotiator. When powerful men panicked, they called Amaris. She talked storms into becoming breezes. Auden leaned close to her ear. "We did good." Amaris kept her smile for the cameras. "Tonight is not about we. Tonight is about the foundation." Auden's smile twitched. "Same thing." Amaris didn't argue. She just squeezed his hand once. It was her way of saying, "Focus." Across the room, Briar Cross stood near the bar, not drinking. Briar was Auden's younger brother, but he moved like the older one. Quiet, sharp, built like a man who carried responsibility in his spine. Briar's wife, Tatum, stood with him. Tatum wore a navy suit and a look that said she had read every contract in the room and found 3 lies. Tatum leaned in and murmured, "This room is full of people who clap with one hand and grab with the other." Briar's mouth tilted slightly. "That's poetic for someone who threatens people with footnotes." Tatum replied, "Footnotes are where the truth hides." Briar's eyes drifted to Auden on stage. "Auden hates hidden truth." Tatum's gaze sharpened. "Then why does he live in it?" Briar didn't answer. He watched Auden smile. He watched the way Auden worked the crowd like a conductor. He watched the way Auden looked like a man who had never been powerless. And Briar remembered when Auden had been powerless. Because this story did not start in D.C., it started in Newark. Newark, New Jersey, 2001. The Foster home on South Orange Avenue smelled like laundry soap, old carpet, and the kind of sadness nobody talked about. Auden was 15 when he arrived with a plastic bag of clothes and a bruise on his cheek he refused to explain. He didn't cry. He didn't ask where he'd sleep. He didn't ask for anything. He walked in like he'd already decided the world couldn't give him anything he needed. In the kitchen, a skinny kid with a serious face stood on a chair, taking apart a cheap radio like it was surgery. Auden squinted. "Why you breaking stuff?" The kid didn't look up. "It was broken when it got here." Auden scoffed. "That's what everybody says." The kid finally looked at him, calm eyes, no fear. "I'm Malachi," the kid said, "but people call me Briar." Auden frowned. "Briar," Briar shrugged. "Miss Corrine said Malachi sounds like I'm 40. Auden let out a short laugh. Him. Briar pointed to a wire. "Hold that." Auden paused. "Who said I'm helping?" Briar's tone stayed calm. "If you don't, it won't work." Auden stared at him, then stepped closer and held the wire. His fingers trembled slightly, not from the wire, from the weird feeling of being needed. Briar clicked 2 pieces together, twisted the wire, then tapped the radio. Music crackled to life. Briar said, "See." Auden blinked. "Okay, you're weird." Briar replied, "You're loud." Auden smirked. "And you're rude." Briar's face didn't change, but his eyes softened. "People who talk a lot usually do it so nobody hears what they don't say." Auden's smirk faded. He didn't respond. That night in the bedroom they shared with 2 other kids, Auden lay awake. The ceiling had a water stain shaped like a country he couldn't name. Briar whispered from the bed across. "You can't sleep." Auden's voice was low. "No." Briar hesitated. "Do you miss somebody?" Auden swallowed. His throat burned. "I miss not being moved around like a box." Briar was quiet, then said, "Same." Auden stared into the dark. "What you want to do when you're grown?" Briar's answer came fast. "Build something that lasts. Something that can't be taken." Auden's chest tightened. "Like what?" Briar sat up slightly. "Systems, infrastructure, logistics, stuff that moves the world. People always underestimate that, but if you control movement, you control money." Auden turned his head. "You talk like a tiny businessman." Briar replied, dead serious, "And you talk like you're scared." Auden's voice sharpened. "I'm not scared." Briar said quietly, "Then vow something." Auden blinked. "A vow." Briar's tone stayed flat, but his words were heavy. "A vow that when we leave here, we don't come back broke, we don't come back begging, we don't let anyone split us." Auden stared into the dark. Then he whispered, "Okay, we vow." Briar said, "No matter what." Auden's voice was firm. "No matter what." Briar whispered, "Brotherhood." Auden swallowed. Brotherhood. That vow was not cute. It was not sweet. It was survival. Years passed. They aged out of the system and moved into a tiny apartment in Newark that had roaches, a busted heater, and walls so thin they could hear their neighbors' arguments like a podcast. Auden worked. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Breyer studied. Breyer built. Breyer fixed old phones, chargers, laptop batteries, anything that had a wire. Auden was the mouth. Breyer was the mind. Auden could walk into a room and convince people they were watching greatness, even if he was wearing cheap shoes and hiding his fear behind a grin. Breyer hated rooms. He preferred machines. Machines didn't lie. Machines didn't pretend they were your friend before they took what they wanted. One winter day, Breyer dragged Auden into an old warehouse job interview. Auden frowned. "Why we here?" Breyer pointed. "Because they need a fleet coordinator. That means access to routes, delivery schedules, and how companies move product." Auden raised an eyebrow. "You trying to learn how to rob people?" Breyer stared. "No, I'm trying to learn how to build a business without guessing." Auden laughed. "Okay, Professor." They got the job. They learned. They watched. They saved every dollar they could. And when they finally opened a small logistics dispatch office, Auden took their last $2,000 and made a sign that said, "Crossline." Breyer stared at it. "Why crossline?" Auden shrugged. "Because we're crossing lines, we're crossing out the past." Breyer's dry humor showed up. "That's corny," Auden grinned, "but memorable." They started with 2 leased vans and a borrowed office phone. Then they won a contract delivering medical supplies for a Newark clinic, then a chain pharmacy, then a regional hospital group. Breyer had a wild idea: build charging stations and battery swap points for delivery fleets. Make electric fleets practical for businesses. Auden listened, eyes bright. "You telling me we make the gas problem somebody else's problem?" Auden said. Breyer nodded. "We build the network, they pay for access." Auden slapped the table. "We're doing it." That was the first time Auden said "we" like it meant forever. Auden met Immerse during a mess. Not a romantic mess, a business mess. In 2013, Crossline had just won a mid-size contract in New Jersey, and one of their subcontractors failed to deliver. The client was angry, threatening lawsuits and refunds. Auden walked into a small conference room to negotiate and found a woman standing at the whiteboard, calm as a nurse in an emergency. She wore a beige blazer, hair pulled back, eyes steady. Auden smiled. "Who are you?" She turned and said, "Immerse Vale, crisis consultant. The client hired me because they think your company talks big." Auden's grin widened. "We do talk big." Immerse replied, "Then you better deliver bigger." Auden laughed. "I like you." Immerse didn't smile. "You don't know me." Auden leaned closer, playful. "I know you're not scared of me." Immerse finally gave him a small smile. "That's true." That night, after Auden fixed the contract issue by pulling an all-night reroute and personally calling every driver, Immerse watched him like she was reading a book she didn't trust. Auden asked, "So, you still think I talk too big?" Immerse replied, "You talk big because you're trying to keep fear from showing." Auden's smile paused. Immerse continued, voice softer, "But you also deliver, that's rare." Auden swallowed. "You always talk like that," Immerse said, "only when it's true." Auden fell in love like a man falling into a deep pool, fast, surprising, and a little scared. Breyer met Tatum in an even messier place. Court. Not because Breyer was in trouble, because Breyer was fighting for a permit. Crossline wanted to build a charging depot near a Newark industrial zone. A local group challenged it. Lawyers got involved. Hearings dragged. Breyer walked into the courtroom with a folder full of technical plans and the expression of a man who hated everyone in suits. Tatum Knox stood on the other side of the aisle, representing a finance group that wanted in on the project. Tatum's voice was clear, sharp, and confident. Breyer listened, annoyed at first, then impressed. After court, Breyer stepped outside and said, "You talk like you enjoy arguing." Tatum looked him up and down. "And you look like you enjoy being right." Breyer replied, "I enjoy being accurate." Tatum's mouth tilted. "Same thing." Breyer surprised himself by smiling. Tatum noticed. "Oh. You do have a face." Breyer replied, deadpan. "It's new." Tatum laughed. "Okay, engineer, let's make money." Breyer didn't trust easily, but he trusted Tatum's mind. And Tatum liked that Breyer didn't perform, he didn't charm, he didn't dance, he just built. By 2017, Crossline expanded down the East Coast. By 2019, they moved their main headquarters to Washington, D.C. because federal contracts were close and the money was bigger. By 2020, they had major operations through the port of Baltimore, Maryland. That location mattered. Ports were power. Ports were access. Ports were leverage. By 2021, Crossline rebranded to Crownline Logistics, a name Auden said sounded more like the future. Breyer hated the rebrand. It sounds like a shampoo, Breyer said. Auden laughed. A rich shampoo, Totem smirked. Luxury shampoo, Amari's always calm said. It sounds like a company that can sit in a room with government officials without being dismissed. Breyer sighed. Fine. They grew faster than even Auden expected. Electric fleet partnerships, battery swap contracts, charging depots, clean logistics routes that cut costs. Their foundation grew too. The Cross Promise, a fund for foster youth tech training, housing support, mentorship. Auden loved the foundation. It made him feel like the past had a purpose. Breyer loved the foundation because it was measurable. He could see outcomes. Sloane wasn't part of this story anymore. It was Amari's and Totem now, two women who did not need saving. They built their own power in the Crown world. And Caleb Voss entered the picture during a high-stakes hearing. Caleb was white, 52, and had the personality of a man who believed emotions were optional. He interviewed for CFO and said, Crownline is impressive, but it's also young. Young companies die from ego. Auden leaned back, amused. You calling me ego? Caleb replied. Caleb is calling you a risk. Breyer stared, then nodded once. Good, Amari's asked. Why do you want the job? Caleb said. Caleb likes impossible problems. And Caleb likes not going to prison because somebody got careless. Auden blinked. Okay, you hired. Caleb's dry humor helped, even when it annoyed Auden. When Auden would talk about legacy, Caleb would mutter, payroll is also legacy. Breyer liked Caleb. Auden tolerated him. Amari's trusted him. Totem watched him, because Totem watched everyone. The first time Crownline hit $1 billion valuation, the Cross family celebrated in a quiet way. No giant party, no flashy nonsense. They went back to Newark. They stood outside the old Foster home building. It had new paint now, new windows, but the air still felt like old memories. Auden stood in front of the steps with his hands in his coat pockets. We really did it, Breyer nodded. We left. Amari stood beside Auden, eyes soft. And you came back with power. Totem crossed her arms. And receipts, Auden laughed. Totem always got receipts. Totem replied, that's why we're still rich. Breyer looked at Auden. Remember the vow? Auden's eyes shined a little. No matter what, Breyer said, no matter what. They hugged, awkward brother hug, quick but real, and for a moment it looked like nothing could break them. If this brotherhood and comeback moment has you locked in, hit the like button and subscribe now, because the next scene flips this whole story into a full thriller. Auden turned back toward the building and whispered almost to himself, we're safe now. Amari's didn't answer, because Amari's knew something Auden didn't. Safety was never permanent, it was rented. Back at the DC gala after Auden's speech, people crowded around him with smiles and questions. A senator shook his hand. A tech CEO asked about expansion. A journalist asked about the foundation. Auden smiled, answered, controlled the room. Then his smartwatch buzzed. Once. Auden glanced down casually, still smiling. Then his smile froze. Auden's eyes tightened. He tilted his wrist closer as if proximity could make the words kinder. The message said, Congrats, Mr. Cross. The U.S. government lists you as legally dead. Auden's heartbeat slammed against his ribs. Amari saw it. Her smile vanished in a blink. She leaned in close, voice low and steady. Auden, don't react, cameras. Auden forced his face back into place, but it didn't fit right anymore. Breyer walked over, reading the shift instantly. What happened? Auden's voice came out too light. Nothing. Breyer's eyes narrowed. That's a lie. Caleb Voss appeared at Auden's shoulder like a ghost in a suit. Mr. Cross, we have a problem. Auden didn't move. Now, Caleb nodded. Now. Amari's tone was controlled. Caleb, say it clean. Caleb swallowed. For a man who loved numbers, he hated saying words like this. A federal auditor flagged the identity verification for the CEO signature on our contract renewals, Caleb said. The system says Auden Cross is deceased. Breyer's face went still. Deceased, Caleb nodded. As in? Dead, Auden's throat tightened. That's impossible. Caleb replied. Caleb agrees, but it's in the database. Amari's eyes sharpened. Which database? Caleb said. A federal contractor verification system. Breyer's voice dropped. So this is tied to government contracts. Caleb nodded. Yes, Auden's mind raced. If the government thought he was dead, their federal contracts could be frozen. Their credibility could collapse, their stock could dip, their board could panic, their enemies would smell blood. Briar's gaze locked on Auden. How could this happen? Auden's voice went low. I don't know. But inside, something old stirred, a memory of a social worker, a clipboard, a late-night move, papers he didn't understand, a name spoken like it was being borrowed. Auden's eyes flicked to Briar. Briar stared back. Briar's face said, Briar remembers too. Amari's whispered, we leave quietly. Auden nodded. Now. They moved through the crowd as if nothing was wrong. Amari's smiled at people. Tatum nodded politely. Briar kept his face calm. Only Caleb looked like he wanted to run. In the car, silence held for 10 seconds. Then Briar spoke. Auden, Briar said, voice flat. Tell me the truth right now. Did you ever use a different name? Auden swallowed. No. Briar's stare didn't move. Did you ever sign anything under a different identity? Auden's breath caught. Amari's leaned in. Auden, Tatum's eyes narrowed. Briar, what are you thinking? Briar didn't blink. I'm thinking the foster system did something, and I'm thinking Auden knows. Auden's voice broke slightly. I don't know. Caleb cleared his throat. Caleb needs to say something else. Amari's turned. Go. Caleb looked at his phone. The auditor meeting is tomorrow morning at HQ, and the notification already triggered a compliance protocol, which means it's not private anymore. Briar's jaw tightened. People will know, Caleb nodded, and the board will panic. Amari's face stayed calm, but her eyes were stormy. Then we control the narrative before it controls us. Tatum muttered, or we find who did it. Auden stared at his phone again. The message had come from an unknown number. He typed back, who is this? No response. He typed again, what do you want? Still nothing. The phone buzzed one more time. A second message arrived. The name was borrowed, time to pay it back. Auden's hand shook. Briar saw it and went still. Briar whispered, oh no. Amari's read over Auden's shoulder and said, very softly, somebody knows. Tatum's voice turned sharp. And somebody is close enough to be confident. Caleb looked out the window like he wished he could teleport out of the car. Caleb hates this. Briar glanced at Caleb. Caleb hates everything. Caleb replied, deadpan, correct. Even in fear, that tiny dry moment helped them breathe. But the fear stayed, because this wasn't just a business problem. This was a past problem. And the past always charged interest. The next morning, Crown Line's DC headquarters looked normal on the outside. Inside, it felt like a building holding its breath. Auden walked in first. His suit was perfect. His face was controlled. Briar walked beside him, silent, eyes scanning. Amari's and Tatum followed, both women calm in a way that meant they were dangerous. Caleb met them near the elevator. Auditor is in conference room 4. Legal is present. Auden nodded. Let's go. Conference room 4 held 3 people from the federal auditing team and 1 company lawyer. The auditor. A woman with a neat bun and a serious expression stood when they entered. Mr. Cross, she said. Auden sat. Good morning. The auditor didn't smile. We need to verify identity for contract authority. Auden nodded. Of course. She opened a laptop. According to federal verification, your social security number does not match a living record. It matches a deceased record. The room went quiet. Auden's ears rang. Briar's face went cold. Amari's asked, controlled, what date is the death recorded? The auditor clicked. August 14th, 2001. Auden's stomach dropped. He was 15 then. He wasn't dead. But 2001 was the year he entered the Newark foster system. Briar's voice came out like stone. That's the year we met. Auden swallowed. Tatum's eyes narrowed sharply. So someone filed something back then, something that marked Auden's identity as closed. Caleb exhaled low. This is intentional. The auditor continued. Until we resolve this, Crown Line's renewal is suspended. You may continue current services under review, but no new awards. Auden's jaw tightened. We'll resolve it. The auditor's gaze stayed steady. This is serious. Amari's replied, we understand. When the meeting ended, the family moved into a private office. The door shut. Auden's mask cracked. Auden whispered, I'm not dead. Briar stared at him. Somebody wants you dead on paper. Tatum's voice sharpened. And if they can kill you on paper, they can kill the company. Amari's turned to Caleb. How long before the board hears? Caleb didn't hesitate. They already know. Someone sent the compliance alert to board members 30 minutes ago. Briar's fist clenched. So it's inside. Caleb nodded. Yes. Auden's chest tightened. This is an attack. Amari said softly, and the foundation could be used too. Briar looked at her. What do you mean? Amari's hesitated. Then she said, the Cross Promise Foundation charter has a clause. Tatum's eyes narrowed. What clause? Amari's took a breath. A legacy clause. If either founder is proven to have material identity misrepresentation, the foundation board can assume temporary voting control to protect the mission. Silence fell. Breyer's voice was low. Who wrote that clause? Amari's swallowed. Our early attorneys suggested it. Tatum's eyes sharpened like knives. That clause is a trap. Caleb muttered. Caleb is going to faint. Nobody laughed this time. Auden stared at Amari's. Why didn't you tell me about that clause? Amari's voice stayed calm. Because it was supposed to protect the kids we help, not hurt us, and because you were focused on building. Breyer spoke like a warning. If the attacker proves identity misrepresentation, the foundation can take votes. Tatum nodded. Without buying a single share. Caleb swallowed. That means the company can be stolen legally. Auden's breath came fast. Who is on the foundation board? Amari's answered. Community leaders, a few donors, 2 attorneys, and... She stopped. Breyer's eyes narrowed. And who? Amari's voice dropped. And one person we never met in person, a proxy board seat, a donor representative. Tatum's face hardened. A hidden hand. Caleb's phone buzzed. He looked down, his face drained. Auden, Caleb said, voice tight. The press just emailed for comment. Breyer asked, on what? Caleb read, on why Crownline's CEO is listed as deceased in a federal database. Auden's stomach turned. The world was already sniffing. Auden whispered, how? Caleb looked up slowly. Because someone leaked it. Breyer's eyes went cold. This is coordinated. Amari's voice turned steady, commanding. We do not panic, we lock in, we find the leak, we find the origin, we protect the kids, we protect the company. Tatum nodded. And we get the truth. Auden looked at Breyer. Breyer, do you remember anything from 2001? Anything about paperwork? Breyer didn't answer right away. His face tightened as if memories were crawling back. Finally, Breyer said, quiet, Breyer remembers a night move. Auden's chest tightened. What? Breyer's voice was low. A caseworker came after hours, said there was a problem with your file, said we had to switch rooms, switch names on a temporary sheet. Amari's eyes sharpened. Switch names? Tatum's voice went hard. That's identity manipulation. Breyer swallowed. Breyer was a kid. Breyer didn't understand, but Breyer remembers you looked scared. Like you knew something, Auden whispered. I didn't know anything, I just did what I was told. Caleb's voice broke the air. Someone just scheduled an emergency board call for tonight. Amari's jaw tightened. Of course they did. Breyer stared at Auden. They're coming for you. Auden's hands clenched. Then I'm not running. Breyer's voice stayed calm but heavy. Then we fight smart. They stood there, 4 adults and 1 CFO, staring at the same truth. The vow they made as boys was being tested. Not by money, not by romance, by paperwork, by the system. By a ghost from 2001 who had decided it was time to collect. The emergency board call started at 7:00 p.m., not 7:05. Not whenever people join. Exactly 7:00. That alone told Breyer Cross everything he needed to know. Whoever scheduled this meeting wanted control. Tight control. The kind of control that didn't leave room for excuses or delays. Auden Cross sat at the long dining table in his DC penthouse with his laptop open, shoulders stiff. His son, Soren, was down the hall doing homework, unaware that grown-ups were quietly fighting a war made of words and documents. Amari stood behind Auden's chair with a hand on his shoulder. Her touch looked calm, but Auden could feel tension in her fingers. Breyer sat across from Auden, elbows on the table, eyes sharp and still. Breyer wasn't scared. He was focused. That was scarier. Tatum sat beside Breyer, already typing, already building a timeline like she was stitching a wound closed before it bled out. Caleb Voss, their white CFO, joined from his office, suit jacket off, tie loosened, face tired. Everybody ready? Caleb asked. Sloan wasn't in this version of the story anymore. Tonight it was the cross foursome plus the CFO. A tight circle, a smaller battlefield. Auden exhaled. Let's do it. The screen filled with faces, board members, legal counsel. 2 people Auden recognized from foundation meetings. 1 person with the camera off and a plain black icon. Auden's eyes narrowed. Who is the camera off person? The board chair, a polished man named Holly's Bain, smiled without warmth. That is a donor representative for the Cross Promise. Amari's spine stiffened. The proxy seat, Holly's nodded. Yes, they requested privacy. Tatum's fingers paused on the keyboard. Convenient. Breyer didn't speak yet. Breyer was watching, counting. Hollis cleared his throat. We are here due to a serious compliance issue involving Crown Line's federal contracts and the personal identity verification of our CEO. Auden's jaw tightened. Auden is right here. Auden can answer questions. Hollis kept his tone smooth. That is not the only concern. We have also been informed that the issue may trigger governance clauses tied to the Cross Promise Foundation. Amari's eyes hardened. Don't say it like that. Hollis smiled thin. Like what? Amari's voice was calm and lethal. Like this is an accident. Someone leaked the audit alert. Someone is steering this meeting. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Hollis raised a hand. Let's stay professional. Breyer finally spoke. Professional is fine, but honest is better. Hollis nodded slowly as if entertaining a child. Then we will be honest. The foundation charter contains a legacy clause. Auden's eyes flicked to Amari's. Amari's didn't blink. Hollis continued. If either founder is proven to have engaged in material identity misrepresentation, the foundation board may assume temporary voting control in Crown Line logistics to protect mission integrity. Auden's chest tightened. Auden did not misrepresent anything. Auden didn't even know. Hollis replied. Intent is not the only factor. Totem cut in. Truth is not proven yet either. Hollis smiled. That's what tonight is about. We vote to initiate a charter trigger review. Breyer's eyes narrowed. A review that gives the foundation board temporary control. Hollis said, correct. Caleb's voice came through speaker, flat and tired. So just to be clear, you want to take control of the company because a government database has an error from 2001. Hollis replied, we want stability. Caleb muttered, Caleb hates that word now. Auden's voice got sharp. Who asked for this meeting? Hollis didn't miss a beat. The donor representative requested it. Auden stared at the camera off icon. So the anonymous seat is driving this. The icon did not respond. Amari's leaned in, voice steady. Auden and Breyer built this foundation to help foster youth, not to create a backdoor for corporate takeover. Hollis replied smoothly, it's not a takeover, it's protection. Totem's eyes flashed. Protection is what people call control when they want to sound kind. Several faces stiffened. Hollis sighed. We will proceed to vote. Auden's pulse hammered. Auden objects. Hollis's smile returned. Noted, Breyer spoke calmly. Before any vote, Breyer requests to know the identity of the donor representative. The bylaws allow that under conflict of interest rules. Hollis paused. The donor representative's identity is protected. Totem leaned forward. Then the meeting is improper. You can't trigger governance power using a masked seat. Hollis's tone turned colder. Council advised it's permissible. Totem replied. Then council is wrong. Hollis ignored her and started counting votes. The vote results appeared on the screen. At first, it looked close. Then the anonymous icon voted. And the motion passed. Auden's chest dropped. Hollis said, the charter trigger review is now active. The foundation board will appoint a temporary governance oversight committee effective immediately. Amari's voice was sharp. No, Hollis replied. Yes. Breyer's eyes hardened. Who is on the committee? Hollis read calmly. Hollis Bain. 2 foundation members. 1 independent auditor and the donor representative. Auden's fists clenched. So the anonymous person now has power over Crown Line. Hollis said, temporary. Caleb's voice came through, dry and bitter. Temporary power is still power. Hollis ended the call with a polite smile. We will be in touch. Good night. The screen went black. For 5 seconds, nobody spoke. Then Auden stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. Auden's voice was tight. They stole the company. Amari stepped in front of him. Not yet. Auden's eyes burned. They just activated a clause that can take voting rights. Amari's replied, calm but firm, which means we have to move faster. Breyer's voice was steady. We need 3 things. Who is the donor representative? Who leaked the audit alert? And who filed the deceased record in 2001? Totem nodded. And we need them in that order because the donor rep is the present threat. Caleb's voice came from the speaker. Caleb has one more thing. Amari's turned to the laptop. Go, Caleb exhaled. Crown Line's internal audit log shows the compliance alert was forwarded from an executive account, not a low-level account. Breyer's eyes narrowed. Which executive? Caleb hesitated. It's complicated. Totem's voice sharpened. Caleb, say it. Caleb swallowed. It came from Amari's foundation email. Silence hit the room like a slap. Auden stared at Amari's. Amari's stared at Caleb. Then Amari's face went cold. That is impossible. Auden's voice came out rough. Amari's turned to Auden, eyes steady. Auden, look at Amari's. Amari's did not forward anything. Briar watched Auden's face closely. Briar knew what this was, not proof. A wedge. Totem spoke low. They're framing Amari's. Caleb nodded. That's what Caleb thinks. Auden's throat tightened. How can they use Amari's email? Amari's voice stayed calm. Phishing, spoofing, or someone has access to Foundation accounts. Totem's eyes narrowed, like the donor representative. Briar said, or someone inside the Foundation admin team. Amari's inhaled slowly. We locked down every account tonight. Auden's voice shook. And Soren, they threatened the kids already. Amari's touched his arm. We keep him close. Briar stood. Briar is going to HQ right now. Briar wants server logs. Totem grabbed her coat. Totem is coming. Auden started to move too. Amari stopped him with a look. Auden stays with Soren. If the enemy wants panic, Auden does not give it. Auden's jaw tightened. Auden hates staying behind. Amari's replied, Auden is not behind. Auden is guarding the thing that matters. Auden breathed hard, then nodded. Briar paused at the door and looked back. Auden. Auden met his eyes. Briar's voice was low. Don't let them split us. Auden's throat tightened. No matter what. Briar nodded once and left. Crownline's DC headquarters at night felt like a different place. The daytime energy was gone. The lights were dim. The halls were too quiet. Briar moved with purpose. Totem followed, heels silent. Caleb met them at the security room with a tired face. Caleb has coffee. It tastes like regret. Totem took it anyway. Perfect. They sat in front of screens. Briar pointed. Show me the forward logs from Amari's Foundation email. Caleb typed. Okay. The forward happened at 4:12 p.m. 2 hours before the call. Totem leaned in. IP address, Caleb frowned. It's masked, routed through a VPN. Briar's jaw tightened. So it was planned. Totem asked, can we see where the VPN originated? Caleb hesitated. We can see a hint. It pinged through a node in Newark. Briar went still. Newark, Briar repeated. Totem's eyes widened slightly. That's not random. Caleb nodded slowly. Caleb thinks it's a message. Briar's voice was tight. Or an origin. Totem stared at Briar. Briar, your memory about the night move in 2001 was that Newark. Briar swallowed. Yes. Caleb leaned back. So whoever did this is pulling your past into your present. Totem's eyes narrowed. And they picked Newark because that is where the paper crime started. Briar's hands clenched. We need names. Who in Newark had access to foster system records? Caleb said. That's not in our database. Totem replied, but it might be in a court database if someone filed the deceased record. Briar's eyes sharpened. We pull the death record filing. Caleb's eyebrows rose. Can we? Totem smiled without joy. Totem can. Totem opened her laptop and started digging through public record pathways and legal request portals. She moved like someone who was born with a keyboard in her hands. Briar watched her with a strange mix of pride and worry. He loved her mind. But he feared what that mind would uncover. Totem suddenly paused. Okay, here. She turned the screen toward them, a document summary. Death record amendment filed. Newark, NJ. Date, August 2001. Filed by Guardian Services Liaison. Briar's throat tightened. Caleb leaned in. Who is the liaison? Totem clicked. A name appeared. Kendall Reeve. Briar's face drained. Caleb frowned. You know that name. Briar swallowed. Yes. Totem's voice went careful. Who is Kendall Reeve? Briar's voice was low. Kendall was a caseworker, the one who moved us that night. Caleb exhaled. So the same person who moved you filed a death record. Totem's eyes narrowed. That's insane. Briar's voice turned hard. It's not insane, it's intentional. Caleb rubbed his forehead. Caleb hates that this is real. Briar stared at the name, feeling the past rise like cold water. Kendall Reeve, a soft voice, nice smile, clean clipboard, the kind of adult who said, this is for your safety, while doing something you didn't understand. Totem said, if Kendall Reeve is alive, we find her. Briar nodded. We go to Newark. Caleb blinked. Now. Briar's eyes stayed steady. Now. Caleb hesitated. Caleb has board duties tomorrow. Totem said, Caleb can do those from the road. Caleb sighed. Caleb cannot believe he is about to road trip to Newark for corporate survival. Briar stood. Welcome to the family. Caleb muttered. Caleb regrets that sentence. Even in the tension, Totem snorted. It was brief, but it helped, because laughter reminded them they were still human. If this Newark lead just made your heart speed up, hit like and subscribe right now. Because what Briar finds in Newark changes what brotherhood even means. and the truth is going to hurt. They arrived in Newark before dawn. Rain misted the windshield as the skyline rose like a memory. Briar stared at familiar streets with a face that didn't move. Tatum watched him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "You okay?" Tatum asked. Briar's voice was flat. "No," Tatum nodded. "Good, that means you're not numb." Caleb parked near an old building with faded brick and new security cameras. "This is the address on the filing." Briar got out, coat collar up. "This place used to be Guardian Services." Tatum's eyes narrowed. "The liaison office." Briar nodded. The building was now a community outreach center. New sign, new paint, but the energy felt old. They walked inside. A receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" Tatum stepped forward, polite but firm. "We need records for Kendall Reeve, former liaison." The receptionist's smile faded. "We don't give staff info." Briar leaned in slightly, voice calm but heavy. "Then give me whoever runs this place." The receptionist hesitated, then picked up the phone. Minutes later, a manager came out. Middle-aged woman, tired eyes. Tatum showed her bar card and said, "This is a legal inquiry." The manager stiffened. "We don't have those records anymore." Briar's eyes narrowed. "That's a lie." The manager frowned. "Excuse me." Briar's voice stayed steady. "People don't lose records that clean unless someone paid to erase them." Caleb cleared his throat, trying to soften. "We're not here to threaten, we just need to talk." The manager's gaze flicked over Caleb's suit, then to Briar's stare. "Why, who are you?" Tatum answered. "Crownline Logistics." The manager's face shifted, recognition. "Oh," she said slowly, "you're those boys." Briar froze. "You remember." The manager's shoulders dropped. "Everyone remembers that case, it was special." Tatum's eyes sharpened. "Special how?" The manager hesitated, then said quietly, "Kendall Reeve didn't work alone, she had a sponsor." Caleb's stomach tightened. "A sponsor?" The manager nodded. "A donor, a man." Briar's voice went low. "Name." The manager shook her head. "I can't say, I signed agreements." Tatum leaned in, voice calm and cold. "Those agreements don't cover fraud." The manager swallowed. "You don't understand, people like him." Briar cut in. "Briar understands better than you." Silence. Then the manager took a slow breath and said, "Roland Vexley." Briar's eyes went hard. Caleb muttered, "Of course." Tatum's jaw tightened. "So Vexley funded the system." The manager nodded. "He funded programs, he showed up for photos, he smiled, but he also requested control." Briar's voice was tight. "And Kendall Reeve did the paperwork." The manager nodded slowly. "Yes," Tatum asked. "Where is Kendall Reeve now?" The manager hesitated. "She retired." "Lives in a senior community in Essex County." Briar said. "Address." The manager looked at Briar for a long moment, then scribbled on a sticky note and slid it across. Briar took it, fingers steady. Tatum nodded. "Thank you." The manager whispered almost to herself, "I always wondered what happened to you boys." Briar looked back at her. "We became the thing he couldn't control." The manager's eyes watered. Caleb cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Let's go." They walked out. Rain hit their faces like cold hands. Briar stared at the address. Then his phone buzzed. "Auden." Briar answered immediately. "Briar." Auden's voice was tense. "Auden just got a notice. The Oversight Committee is requesting emergency access to Crownline voting controls." Briar's chest tightened. "They're moving faster," Auden continued, "and Amari's foundation account just sent a message to donors saying Auden is stepping down." Briar's blood ran cold. "That's fake." Auden's voice cracked slightly. "But it's out there." Briar's jaw tightened. "Briar has a name, Kendall Reeve. She filed the death record. We're going to her now." Auden exhaled hard. "Bring truth back fast." Briar's voice was low. "No matter what." Auden replied, "No matter what." Briar hung up. Caleb stared at him. "They're going to steal the company today." Briar said, "Then we stop them today." Senior community was quiet, almost too peaceful. Clean sidewalks, trimmed bushes. Little birds. Briar felt rage rise because this place looked like comfort built on other people's pain. They checked in. A staff member led them to a small sitting room. And there she was, Kendall Reeve, 70-something, gray hair, pearl earrings, soft cardigan, a woman who looked harmless. She looked up and smiled like she was greeting old coworkers. "Oh," Kendall said softly. "It's you." Briar froze. "You remember." Kendall nodded. "Of course I do. Auden and Briar, the special placement." Tatum's voice was sharp. "You filed a death record on a living child." Kendall's smile didn't move. "It was paperwork." Caleb's voice came out strained. "That paperwork is collapsing a billion-dollar company right now." Kendall looked mildly amused. "Is it?" Briar stepped closer. Why did you do it? Kendall sighed like she'd been waiting for this conversation. Because I was told to. Tatum leaned forward. By Roland Vexley. Kendall paused, then nodded once. Yes. Briar's voice shook with anger he tried to control. What did Vexley want? Kendall folded her hands. He wanted insurance. Caleb frowned. Insurance on a child? Kendall looked at Caleb like he was slow. Insurance on a man, the man that child would become. Briar's throat tightened. So Vexley planned this. Kendall's eyes glinted. He planned options. Tatum's voice was cold. And you helped. Kendall shrugged. I was a caseworker. I did what the system demanded. Briar snapped. The system didn't demand that. Vexley did. Kendall's expression finally changed, a hint of irritation. Watch your tone, Kendall said. Briar's eyes burned. Watch yours, you stole a life on paper. Kendall's mouth tightened. He was supposed to be protected. Tatum's eyes narrowed. Protected from what? Kendall hesitated. Briar leaned in. Tell the truth. Kendall's voice dropped. From his biological father. Silence hit. Caleb blinked. His biological father, who is that? Kendall exhaled slowly. Roland Vexley's brother. Briar's stomach dropped. Tatum's eyes widened. So Vexley is Auden's uncle. Kendall nodded. Yes. Caleb whispered, that's insane. Briar's mind raced. If Auden's biological father was Vexley's brother, then Vexley had family power. He could control the story, control the identity, control the future. Tatum's voice sharpened. Is Auden's father alive? Kendall shook her head. No. He died years ago, Briar asked. Then why keep Auden dead on paper? Kendall's eyes narrowed. Because Vexley didn't want the world connecting him to that child. It would hurt his image, and it would give that child a claim. Caleb's voice came out rough. A claim to what? Kendall leaned back, calm again. To money, influence, legacy, Tatum whispered. So this was about control. Kendall nodded. Always. Briar's hands clenched. And now he wants the company. Kendall's smile returned. He wants to make sure you boys remember who gave you a chance. Tatum's voice was sharp. He didn't give them a chance, they took it. Kendall's eyes flicked to Tatum. Are you his wife? Tatum replied. Yes. Kendall nodded slowly. Then you know how men like Vexley operate. He doesn't like debt unpaid. Briar leaned in. We're not paying him with our lives. Kendall's smile was small. You might not have a choice. Caleb suddenly said, we need this on record. Tatum snapped. Caleb held up his phone. Caleb is recording. Kendall, say it again. Say Vexley ordered the death record filing. Kendall's eyes sharpened. Turn that off. Caleb's voice was steady, surprising even himself. No, Kendall stood slowly. You have no idea what you're doing. Briar's voice was ice. We do, we're ending it. Kendall's face hardened. Vexley will not let you. Tatum replied, then we won't ask. Briar stepped back, controlling his breathing. Kendall, one question, who is the donor representative seat on the foundation board? Kendall's eyes flickered. Briar pressed, name. Kendall hesitated just a second too long, and that second was enough, because her eyes went toward the door like she was thinking about who might hear. Tatum saw it. Caleb saw it. Briar saw it. Briar said softly, the donor rep is here, isn't he? Kendall's lips pressed together. Tatum's voice went cold. Vexley is in the building. Kendall didn't answer, but her silence was an answer. Caleb whispered, we need to leave. Briar nodded. Now. They walked out fast, not running, but moving with purpose. In the lobby, Briar's phone buzzed again. Amari's. Briar answered. Briar. Amari's voice was calm but urgent. The Oversight Committee just sent a formal notice. They are invoking the legacy clause. They're attempting to transfer temporary voting control within 2 hours. Briar's stomach dropped. 2 hours. Amari's continued. They also sent a statement to press claiming Auden is stepping down for integrity reasons. Tatum's voice cut in, loud enough for Amari's to hear. That's fraud. Amari's replied, yes, and they want panic. Briar's mind moved fast. Briar has proof of who filed the death record. Amari's voice sharpened. Do you have it on record? Briar looked at Caleb. Caleb nodded. Caleb recorded Kendall. Briar spoke into the phone. We have a recording linking Vexley to the filing and the donor power. Amari's inhaled. Good, get it to Tatum's secure folder. We will present it to the board and file emergency injunction papers. Briar's eyes narrowed. We're on our way back. Amari's voice softened slightly. Be careful, not scared, just smart. Briar replied, always. He hung up. Tatum looked at Briar. This is bigger than company theft. This is family theft. Briar nodded. Yes. Caleb muttered. Caleb is never complaining about quarterly reports again. Totem replied. Caleb better not. If this Newark reveal just blew your mind, Vexley connected to Auden's bloodline and the legacy clause countdown. Subscribe right now and hit like, because the final showdown is about to happen. The brothers either lose everything in one legal move, or they expose the whole system. They drove back like time was chasing them. Briar stared at the recording file on Caleb's phone like it was a weapon made of truth. Totem drafted emergency filings in the passenger seat, fingers moving fast. Caleb drove with both hands on the wheel, jaw tight. At the penthouse, Auden waited with Amaris. Soren was in his room, headphones on, unaware that men in suits were trying to erase his father with paperwork. Auden's face was calm, but his eyes were red with pressure. When Briar walked in, Auden stood immediately. Briar nodded. We found Kendall Reeve. Auden's throat tightened. And, Totem answered, she admitted Vexley ordered the death record filing in 2001. Auden's face hardened. So he did this. Amaris stepped closer. And the donor representative seat. Briar's eyes stayed sharp. Kendall didn't name it, but she acted like Vexley himself is behind it. Caleb held up his phone. Caleb recorded her. It's clean enough to show intent. Amaris took a breath, already moving. Send it to Totem's secure drive, now. Totem nodded, transferring files. Auden's voice went low. So Vexley is my uncle. Silence. Briar watched Auden carefully. Auden's face looked like it was made of stone now, not because he didn't feel, because he felt too much and didn't want it spilling. Briar said softly, Briar didn't know. Auden swallowed. But Briar remembered the night move. Briar nodded once. Yes, Auden's eyes flashed. Why didn't you tell Auden sooner? Briar's voice stayed steady. Because Briar didn't know it would come back like this, and because Briar didn't want to reopen trauma. Amaris cut in quickly. No brother fight right now, not today. Auden exhaled through his nose. Fine, Totem looked at her laptop. Injunction drafted. If we file and get a judge quickly, we can freeze the voting transfer. Caleb said. Caleb can call our outside counsel. Amaris nodded. Do it. Auden's phone buzzed. He looked down. His face tightened. Amaris noticed. What is it? Auden turned the screen. Unknown number. 2 hours. Legacy clause, pay back the name. Briar's jaw clenched. He's watching. Totem's voice went cold. That's intimidation. Amaris replied, and it's leverage. Auden whispered. Auden never borrowed anything from him. Briar said quietly, but the system did. Amaris lifted her chin. Then we break the system's hold. Totem tapped her keyboard. Filing now. Caleb returned from a call. Outside counsel is ready, but the board is moving fast. They're meeting with Foundation Counsel in 1 hour. Amaris nodded. Then we meet them first. Auden stared at Amaris. How? Amaris' eyes were steady. We go public first with control, not panic. We tell the part that inspires and we hold the part that destroys until the court freezes them. Briar frowned. Public story could trigger more attacks. Amaris nodded. Yes, but silence is letting them write our story. Auden's voice was low. Auden hates being a headline. Amaris squeezed his hand. Then Auden becomes the author. Auden stared at her and his chest tightened. This wasn't just romance. This was partnership under fire. Totem looked at Briar. If we win the injunction, we still have to answer the question. Briar asked. What question? Totem's voice was careful. Why Auden was marked dead in 2001 and what happened that night. Auden went still. Briar's eyes flickered to Auden because there was one more truth sitting between them. A truth from foster care that neither had spoken out loud in years. Auden's voice came out quiet. Briar. That night, Kendall said we had to sign a temporary sheet. I remember my hand shaking. I remember you holding the pen like you'd done it before. Briar's face tightened. Auden continued. Briar, what did we sign? Briar didn't answer. Totem's eyes widened slightly, turning to Briar. Caleb stopped moving. Amaris' voice was soft but firm. Briar, Briar swallowed. Then Briar said, low, like admitting it cost him something, we signed a name swap. Auden's chest dropped. A name swap. Briar nodded once. Kendall said your file was hot. Said someone was looking. Said if we swapped for a while, you'd be safe. Totem whispered, that's identity fraud. Briar's voice tightened. We were kids. Auden's eyes burned. So Briar knew my name wasn't mine. Briar shook his head quickly. No, Briar didn't understand long term. Briar thought it was temporary. And then the system moved us again and it never got fixed. Amaris' eyes narrowed. So the legally dead record could be tied to the swapped identity. Caleb muttered, this is a nightmare. Auden stared at Briar, hurt and love colliding. Why didn't you tell Auden? Briar's voice broke slightly. Because Breyer thought bringing it up would break you, because you finally looked like you believed you were safe. Auden's jaw clenched hard. Amari's stepped between them. This conversation continues later. Right now, we stop the vote transfer. Tatum nodded, but her eyes stayed on Breyer. We will come back to this. Caleb checked his watch. 1 hour and 12 minutes. Auden exhaled. Then move. They moved. But as they did, Breyer couldn't shake the feeling that the enemy had already won one thing. The enemy had forced the brothers to look at each other like strangers. And that was the oldest trick in the world. Split the bond, then take the crown. The clock on Auden's penthouse wall felt too loud. Every second sounded like a door locking. The legacy clause transfer window was closing. The Foundation's oversight committee was trying to take temporary voting control, and the press already had a draft story claiming Auden was stepping down for integrity reasons. Auden Cross stood near the window, looking out at the DC lights like he could see a way out on the streets below. Breyer Cross sat at the dining table with his laptop open, staring at the recording Caleb had captured in Newark. Kendall Reeves' voice sat inside that file like a poison confession. Tatum cross-paced, phone in hand, running a legal checklist out loud like a pilot preparing for a crash landing. Amari's Cross stood by the kitchen island, calm, steady, and watchful. Her mind was doing what it always did during a crisis, turning fear into steps. Caleb Voss sat in a chair with his tie loosened, looking like a man who regretted every life choice that led him into foster system conspiracy meets billionaire logistics thriller. Caleb cleared his throat. Caleb just want to say Caleb misses when the biggest problem was fuel costs. Tatum didn't even look at him. Caleb, focus. Caleb nodded. Caleb is focused. Caleb is also stressed. Auden finally spoke, voice low. They want to take our company through our own foundation. Amari's answered calmly. Yes, and we are going to stop them through our own receipts. Breyer's eyes stayed on the laptop. The most dangerous trap is the one that looks like kindness. Amari's nodded. That's why they use the foundation. It makes the takeover sound noble. Tatum stopped packing. Okay, here's the plan. Step 1, file emergency injunction. Step 2, deliver evidence to the judge and to the board. Step 3, freeze the transfer. Step 4, force Holly's Bain and the anonymous donor seat to reveal identity. Caleb raised a finger. Caleb wants to add Step 5, keep the press from turning this into a circus. Amari's replied, That's my Step 0. Auden's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Last chance, pay back the name. Auden stared at it like it was a snake. Breyer said quietly, Roland Vexley wants you to bow. Auden's jaw tightened. Auden does not bow. Tatum snapped her laptop shut. Good, because we have court. They moved like a unit, not loud, not messy, just sharp. Auden wore a dark suit with no tie. He wanted to look like a man ready for truth, not a man hiding behind polish. Breyer wore his usual simple black. He looked like the type of man who built engines and broke lies. Amari's wore a gray coat, hair sleek, face calm. She had the talk people down presence, but today she felt more like a shield. Tatum carried a file box and a tablet. She looked like she could sue a thunderstorm and win. Caleb followed with a laptop bag like a man walking into a meeting that could end his career. He kept muttering, Caleb hates this, under his breath like a prayer. They reached the courthouse and passed security. No drama, no shouting, no scene, just the quiet weight of what was at stake. Tatum led them into a small courtroom where an emergency hearing had been granted. The judge, a woman with a sharp gaze, took her seat. Counsel, the judge said, you have 10 minutes. Tatum stood. Your Honor, Crownline Logistics is facing an imminent governance transfer through a charitable foundation clause. The clause is being triggered based on a falsified identity record from 2001. We believe this is part of an intentional scheme to seize corporate control. The judge lifted an eyebrow. A falsified identity record, Tatum nodded. Yes, the CEO, Auden Cross, has been flagged as legally deceased in a federal database. The recorded death date is August 14, 2001. Mr. Cross was alive and in foster care at that time. We believe a Newark foster system liaison filed the record at the direction of an outside party. Amari stepped forward slightly and added, Your Honor, the clause transfer would allow unelected individuals to control corporate votes and disrupt federal supply chain contracts. This is a national interest issue as well as a private harm. The judge looked at Auden. Mr. Cross, is it true your identity verification is failing? Auden's voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor, it is failing because the system says I'm dead, but I'm here. The judge's gaze shifted to Breyer. Mr. Cross, your role. Breyer replied calm. Breyer is co-founder and operations lead. Breyer believes this attack is designed to split the brothers and steal the company. The judge turned back to Tatum. Evidence? Tatum motioned to Caleb. We have a recording. Caleb blinked, then stood like a man stepping onto thin ice. Caleb will play it. Caleb played the audio. Kendall Reeves' voice filled the room. Yes. Roland Vexley ordered the filing. He wanted insurance. The child was supposed to be protected. Then Kendall's line. Roland Vexley's brother. The audio stopped. The judge leaned forward slightly. That is significant, Tatum nodded. We ask the court to issue an immediate temporary restraining order preventing any transfer of voting authority under the Foundation Charter until a full review is conducted. A lawyer at the opposite table stood. Your Honor, this is overreach. The Foundation is acting within its charter to protect integrity. Tatum replied. Integrity cannot be built on fraud. The judge's eyes sharpened. Who represents the Foundation today? The opposing lawyer said. Hollis Bain, board chair. The judge looked at Hollis. Hollis sat stiff, trying to look offended rather than nervous. The judge said, Mr. Bain, do you deny any connection between your committee action and the Newark record filing? Hollis cleared his throat. We acted on compliance alerts. We did not file any record. Tatum nodded. We agree. Hollis Bain did not file the record. He is a tool, not the hand. Few people in the courtroom shifted at that. Hollis's face reddened. Excuse me. Tatum didn't blink. The hand is Roland Vexley or someone acting for him. We have further evidence that a masked donor representative is driving votes through the Foundation board. The judge's gaze sharpened. Masked, Amari stepped in. A proxy seat has been used without revealing identity, yet it holds influence over corporate governance. The judge looked unimpressed. That is unusual. Tatum nodded. Yes. The opposing lawyer tried again. Your Honor, even if there were issues in 2001, the Foundation has a duty. The judge raised a hand. I've heard enough for today. The judge turned to Tatum. Temporary restraining order granted. No voting transfer. No governance shift under the legacy clause until further notice. Auden's chest loosened for the first time in days. Breyer exhaled slowly, eyes closing for half a second. Amari squeezed Auden's hand. Caleb whispered. Caleb could cry. Tatum replied under her breath. Do not. The judge added. I will also require disclosure of the donor representative's identity if they are participating in governance actions. There is no integrity without transparency. Hollis's face tightened. The opposing lawyer looked startled. The judge banged the gavel lightly. We reconvene in 72 hours. The hearing ended. They walked out of the courtroom into a bright hallway. Auden breathed in like he had been underwater. We froze it, Auden said. Amari's replied, we paused it. Breyer's voice stayed steady. The enemy will adjust. Tatum nodded. They always do. Caleb exhaled. At least we aren't dead today. Auden glanced at him. Caleb shrugged. Caleb is trying humor. It's not his gift. Breyer muttered. It's painful. Amari's almost smiled. Almost. Then Tatum's phone buzzed. She read it. Her face went hard. What? Breyer asked. Tatum lifted her eyes. The board is calling an emergency meeting anyway, not to take votes, to ask for resignations. Auden's jaw tightened. Of course. Amari's gaze sharpened. They couldn't steal the keys, so they will try to pressure the driver out of the car. Breyer said, we go. Boardroom at Crownline felt different now. Not because the furniture moved, because fear had moved. Board members looked nervous. Some looked eager. Some looked like they were waiting for permission to be cruel. Hollis Bain sat at the head of the table with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. Auden walked in first. The room quieted. Breyer walked beside him. That mattered. Amari's and Tatum came in like two attorneys who were also family. Caleb took his seat as CFO, face stiff. Hollis cleared his throat. Given today's court decision, the committee recognizes the voting transfer is paused. Auden didn't sit. Paused because you were trying to do something wrong. Hollis's smile tightened. We disagree with that characterization. Tatum spoke calmly. You can disagree in your diary. A few board members shifted. One coughed to cover a laugh. Hollis frowned. This meeting is about leadership stability. Investors are anxious. The press is circling. Federal contracts are under review. We propose a temporary leadership change until identity issues are resolved. Auden's jaw clenched. Auden is not stepping down. A board member spoke. Auden, this isn't personal, it's business. Breyer's eyes sharpened. It is personal when you target someone's identity. Another board member said, if the government database says he's deceased, that's a problem. Immerse spoke, calm and controlled. It's a problem caused by fraud in 2001. We are correcting it. Hollis leaned forward. Correction could take months. The market doesn't wait months. Totem replied, then the market can learn patience. Hollis sighed. We are prepared to vote for interim leadership. Breyer's eyes narrowed. You can vote, but you can't force an honest man out without cause. Hollis's smile returned. Cause is reputational risk, and the board has authority. Caleb finally spoke, voice low and flat. Caleb wants to remind everyone that acting out of fear creates lawsuits. Hollis glanced at Caleb. We are already in court, Mr. Voss. Caleb replied, yes, and some of you will be personally named if you keep playing games. A hush fell. Hollis tightened. Is that a threat? Caleb answered, dead calm. It's math. Breyer glanced at Caleb. That was good. Caleb whispered, Caleb is proud. Hollis continued, we request Auden's resignation for the good of the company. Auden stared at the room and realized something. This wasn't about good of the company. This was about comfort. Some people would rather destroy the creators than admit they helped fund a broken system. Auden exhaled slowly. Then Auden did something nobody expected. Auden sat down. Auden folded his hands. Auden looked at Hollis and said very calmly, Auden will not resign, but Auden will restructure. Hollis blinked. Restructure? Auden nodded. Yes, governance, transparency, foundation charter amendments, vendor locks, audit controls, everything. A board member frowned. You can't change the foundation charter overnight. Totem replied, we can propose an emergency amendment and call an open meeting. Hollis snapped. The donor representative has to approve charter changes. Aries tilted her head. Which is why we're going to unmask that seat. Hollis's eyes flashed. That seat is private. Totem smiled slightly. Not anymore, the judge said so. Hollis's mouth tightened. Auden leaned forward. Who is the donor representative? Silence. Hollis glanced at the camera screen where the anonymous icon would usually appear in virtual meetings. But today the donor representative was not present. Breyer noticed. He's hiding. Auden's voice stayed calm. He can hide all he wants. We already have his name. Hollis stiffened. You do not. Immerse spoke softly. Roland Vexley. Several board members froze. One whispered, Vexley. Hollis's face tightened. That is speculation. Totem slid a document across the table. That is not speculation, that is a record trail, and it will be in court. Hollis's hand trembled slightly as he looked at it. Breyer watched him and realized something else. Hollis wasn't the mastermind. Hollis was a man who had agreed to something he could no longer control. Breyer leaned in. Hollis, who hired you to do this? Hollis's jaw clenched. No one hired me. Breyer's voice was steady. Then who promised you safety? Hollis's eyes flickered just once. Totem saw it, Immerse saw it, Auden saw it. Auden spoke softly. Hollis, this doesn't end well for you. Tell the truth now. Hollis swallowed. I'm trying to protect the foundation. Totem replied, you're protecting a donor, not children. Hollis snapped, voice rising. You don't understand what it's like when donors pull funding. Immerse's face stayed calm. Immerse understands. That's why Immerse built an endowment. The foundation does not need one man. Hollis froze. Auden nodded. Exactly, we're not dependent. Hollis looked around the room, realizing his leverage was slipping away. He sat back, breathing hard. A board member asked, so what's your proposal, Auden? Auden looked at Breyer for a long moment. Then Auden said, co-leadership, full transparency. Breyer will become president of operations and governance. Auden remains CEO for external relationships. Any major security or vendor contract requires joint sign-off. Foundation charter amendments will remove anonymous donor seats from governance roles, and we will publish an annual transparency report on governance triggers. Hollis frowned. That's extreme. Totem replied. It's called learning. Caleb added, also it's called protecting your money. The board murmured. Some looked relieved, some looked annoyed. One board member said, this seems reasonable. Hollis's jaw tightened. We will need to vote. Auden nodded. Vote. They voted. And for the first time in days, the result felt like breath. The board approved the co-leadership structure, not unanimously, but enough. Hollis looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. Auden stood up. Good, meeting adjourned. Hollis snapped. You can't adjourn. Totem cut in. He just did. Breyer looked at Hollis one last time. The next time you think about protecting something, protect the truth. They left. Back at the penthouse, the house was too quiet. Soren was asleep. A book lay open on his chest. His face looked peaceful in a way Auden hadn't felt in weeks. Auden watched him for a moment, then stepped into the kitchen where Briar stood alone. Briar was staring at the counter like it might give him the courage to say what he had avoided. Auden's voice was low. "We need to talk." Briar nodded. "Yes." Auden leaned against the island. "Briar said we signed a name swap." Briar swallowed. "Yes." Auden's eyes burned. "What exactly did we sign?" Briar's voice was quiet. "A temporary guardian sheet. Kendall said there was a safety risk tied to your name. She said if anyone searched you, they wouldn't find you if your file was marked closed. She said the fastest way was to close one record and activate another." Auden whispered, "Close as in dead." Briar nodded once. "Yes." Auden's throat tightened. "And I didn't know. I was 15. I just did what I was told." Briar's voice cracked slightly. "Briar was 13. Briar thought he was saving you." Auden stared. "So Briar did it to protect me." Briar nodded, shame in his eyes. "Yes." Auden exhaled, slow and painful. "And that lie built our future." Briar's voice was low. "We built our future, the lie just hid you." Auden's eyes were wet but angry. "It didn't just hide me, it erased me." Briar whispered, "I know." Silence filled the kitchen. Then Briar said something he didn't expect to say out loud. "Briar is tired," Briar said. "Briar is tired of being scared the past will show up. Briar is tired of pretending paperwork doesn't matter." Auden swallowed. "Auden is tired too." Briar looked at him. "Briar thought telling you would break you." Auden's voice was rough. "It did, but not in the way you think." Briar's eyes narrowed. "What way?" Auden stared at him. "It broke the lie, not the brotherhood." Briar's throat tightened. Auden stepped closer. "We made a vow, no matter what." Briar whispered, "No matter what." Auden nodded. "Then we face it now, we fix it, publicly if we have to." Briar's eyes flashed. "That will hurt." Auden replied, "Yes." Briar asked, "And if the government won't fix it fast, if contracts are frozen for months?" Auden's voice got quiet. "Then we lose money." Briar stared. "And people might lose jobs." Auden nodded, pain in his eyes. "Yes." Briar's jaw clenched. "So it's bittersweet." Auden's mouth twisted. "It is." Briar whispered, "But it's honest." Auden nodded. "And honesty is the only way the past stops owning us." Briar's eyes softened. "Okay." 3 days later, the court reconvened. This time, Holly's Bane appeared with a different lawyer, and the anonymous donor representative finally appeared on video. Camera on, face visible. A man in his late 50s with a smooth smile and expensive calm. Roland Vexley. Amari sat beside Auden in the courtroom and felt Auden's body stiffen like a locked door. Briar's face went cold. Tatum leaned forward, eyes sharp. Caleb whispered. Caleb knew it. The judge looked at the screen. "Mr. Vexley, you have been identified as the donor representative participating in foundation governance." Vexley smiled politely. "I am a donor and a supporter of foster youth." Tatum stood. "You are also the man who ordered a death record filing in 2001. Vexley's smile didn't move. "That is a serious accusation," Tatum replied, "and it's supported by recorded testimony." The judge said, "We heard the recording. Mr. Vexley, explain your involvement." Vexley sighed lightly, like the whole thing was beneath him. "I did what I believed was necessary to protect a child from a dangerous association." Auden's eyes narrowed. "Dangerous association." Vexley's eyes drifted to Auden. "Your biological father." Auden's jaw tightened. "Auden never knew him." Vexley nodded. "That was the point." Briar's voice cut in, calm but sharp. "You didn't protect him, you owned him." Vexley smiled faintly. "Ownership is a harsh word." Amari spoke, voice steady. "Control is a clearer word." Vexley's eyes shifted slightly. "Mrs. Cross, I respect your work, but you're emotional." Amari's didn't blink. "Amari's is disciplined, there's a difference." The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Vexley, did you use foundation governance to attempt corporate control?" Vexley replied smoothly. "I attempted to preserve integrity. If the founder identity is compromised, the mission is compromised." Tatum said, "You created the compromise." Vexley's smile thinned. "The system created it." Briar's eyes burned. "Then why did you wait until we were successful?" Vexley paused just a fraction. Then he said, "Because power matters." That line landed like a bell. The judge's gaze sharpened. "That is a revealing statement." Vexley tried to recover. "Your Honor, I mean the power to fund change." The judge didn't look convinced. Tatum stepped forward. "We request the court permanently bar Mr. Vexley from foundation governance roles and order a corrective legal pathway to repair Mr. Cross's identity record." The opposing counsel argued. The judge listened. Then the judge spoke. "Mr. Vexley," the judge said, "this court is not persuaded that your actions were for integrity. They appear to be for leverage. The foundation will remove your proxy seat. Your governance involvement is suspended pending investigation. Crown Line is ordered to submit corrective documentation to federal systems with court oversight." Auden exhaled. Breyer closed his eyes briefly. Amari squeezed Auden's hand. Totem's shoulders dropped for the first time in days. Caleb whispered, "Caleb might actually smile." Totem murmured, "Don't push it." Vexley's face stayed calm, but his eyes turned cold. He looked directly at Auden and said softly, "You can't erase me, I'm family." Auden stared back, voice low. "You're blood, not family." Vexley's smile flickered. Then the screen went dark. The court win didn't fix everything overnight. Federal systems moved slowly. That was reality. Crown Line lost a major renewal in the short term. Stock dipped. Some expansion projects paused. The board stayed nervous. Auden had to stand in front of employees and say words he hated saying. "We're tightening," Auden told them in a company-wide address. "We're slowing some growth to protect long-term stability." It hurt. Breyer watched faces in the crowd, people who depended on them and felt the weight of every childhood lie. But the company didn't collapse because the brothers didn't collapse. They cut unnecessary spending. They protected jobs where they could. They leaned on private contracts while federal contracts were under review. Amaris and Totem rewrote the foundation charter with transparency baked in. No masked seats. No hidden leverage. No integrity language that could be weaponized. Caleb built new internal controls so no one could forward compliance alerts from executive accounts without triggering immediate review. When Caleb presented the new system, he said, "Caleb built this so nobody can set the building on fire with an email." Breyer blinked. "That's dramatic for Caleb." Caleb replied, "Caleb is evolving." Auden actually laughed, a small laugh, but real. At home, things shifted too. Auden had nightmares some nights, not about being dead, about being erased. Breyer woke up early and sat in silence, staring at nothing, as if the past was still waiting for him to blink. Amaris held Auden when he couldn't hold himself. Totem held Breyer's hand when his pride wanted to pretend he didn't need it. And Soren's sweet, quiet Soren asked the question that brought the whole story back to what mattered. "Dad," Soren said one evening, sitting on the couch with his homework, "if the computer says you're dead, does that mean I'm not supposed to have you?" Auden's throat tightened. Auden pulled Soren close. "No, son, it means the computer is wrong and we're fixing it." Soren nodded, then whispered, "Okay." Breyer watched that moment and felt something loosen in his chest. Because this wasn't just about money or headlines. It was about making sure the next generation didn't grow up believing they could be erased. Weeks later, Auden and Breyer drove back to Newark. They didn't tell the press. They didn't bring security. They didn't make it a moment. They stood outside the old foster home building under a gray sky. Auden stared at the steps. "We made a vow here." Breyer nodded. "No matter what." Auden exhaled. "We thought no matter what meant we never fall." Breyer replied, "But it really means we get up honest." Auden looked at him. "Breyer's sorry." Breyer's eyes tightened. "Breyer did it to protect Auden." Auden nodded, "And Auden is angry." Breyer swallowed. "Fair." Auden continued, "But Auden also knows Breyer saved Auden in the only way a kid could." Breyer's throat tightened. "So what now?" Auden stared at the building. "Now we stop living in borrowed names, now we live in truth." Breyer nodded. "Okay." Auden extended his hand, not for a blood oath, not for pain, for choice. Breyer took it. They shook once. A simple shake. A grown man vow. Auden said, "Brothers, no lies." Breyer replied, "Brothers, no lies." They stood in silence as cars passed, as life moved. And for the first time, the past felt smaller than the future. Not gone, but smaller. The lesson from this story. Survival secrets can keep someone safe for a day, but they can also trap them for years. Real love is not hiding the truth. Real love is facing it together. And real power is not control. It's freedom, earned by honesty, boundaries, and courage. If this story had you locked in and you enjoyed every bit of it, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. No more lies. It helps the channel, and it tells me you want more Black billionaire CEO thrillers with romance, power, and twists.